You're listening to Phyla and Fandom, podcast on the Nerdsloth Network. Today's episode is all about music, from animal vocalizations to musicians. The world is absolutely full of song, and the better we listen, the more we learn. Let's talk about it in episode 3.
You can't teach me anything, I got a brick between the ears. I don't have time to wonder why the seasons chase the years. Water's wet in my eyes are dry and that wind it tends to blow. Well, I'm too old to learn, cause there ain't nothing left to know.
You're listening to Phyla and Fandom, a podcast on the Nerdsloth Network ran by two furry scientists, your resident zookeeper, Dr. Wildlife,
and bug lover, me, Nassie.
Each week, we will be exploring the world around us by discussing current topics in our own scientific fields, as well as current happenings in fandom-based subcultures like the furry fandom.
Today's date is March 12th, 2019, and this will be episode 3. So for today's guest, we have Pepper Coyote. He's a musician in the fandom, a recent Twitch gamer, comedian, and also a recent cool bird dude.
Hey everybody, what is going on? I am a recent bird convert. I mean, you're like kind of part of the reason of that, because you're one of the first bird characters I saw, and I'm like, I get it. I see why people like birds.
Oh, that's good. I'm glad.
Like 5 years later, I made a bird.
That's awesome. Wow, it's been a while then.
Yeah, because I don't know. I feel like I take the same amount of thought and care into coming up with new. Well, it's not even coming up with new characters because I'm just like I act the same. It's not like he has a different personality. It's like bringing a child into the world. There's a lot to consider. Are we ready for the type of responsibility necessary to be a bird?
Yeah, exactly. It took me 2 years to make Nassie, so I understand that completely.
And I mean, who knows? I mean, I have a lot of characters. Maybe I'll become a bird one day too.
Yeah, I mean, you're already like a unique thing, though. I'm
right?
Like basic dog and basic bird.
We'll just call it Metal Bird.
Metal bird. I like that. I should like sculpt some like weird mechanical wings, which people that have protogen characters listening to this are probably having a heart attack right now, because if you don't know, there's a lot of lore to the protogen world, and for some reason, I have become the face of the illegal meme for protogen. And it's art of my character saying, "Wait, that's illegal." And I don't know who did it, but it's everywhere. And
That's
wings
good.
are actually illegal for protogen. So someone's probably having a heart attack and being like, "She's going against everything that I ever thought she would say," because I said I want wings. But
I live in Arizona, which is near where like the angel dragons came from, because Eno lives down here. And
Yeah.
I just went on Twitter and I'm like, I will get. It was kind of a joke, but I also kind of wanted. I'm like, I will PayPal $1 to whoever like draws me as an angel dragon. And then I got a couple, and then I had her fan, I guess fans or just people who were like tagging her in posts, not directly trying to tell on me, but trying to tell on me, being like, did you say this is okay? And she's like, "Cool design, Pep." And I'm like, "Thanks."
sometimes the fandom just do be like that.
Yeah, I've never like really been a part of or know the like custom character thing, and then recently,
the species phenomenon.
Yeah, like it recently. My friend made a protogen too, and I was like, "Oh, like what is this?" And it was like, "This is what it is. This is strictly what it is." And I was like, "Wow."
Yeah,
That's why I kind of like stuff like that. It's wholly fandom created.
exactly. Yeah. And I mean, I think that's a good, actually a really good lead into like music in the fandom. I know we usually on these podcasts kind of go into the science world first, but I think this is a wonderful segue into the creativity that the fandom has. I mean, we were just talking about like original species and such, which are pretty awesome, but there's a lot of musicians, and I mean, artist, of course, is one aspect of where creativity really shines in the fandom, but then music really is as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we've been trying to build up the live music scene. We've had a lot of electronic music going for a while because DJ culture is pretty popular in the fandom. Which I mean, if you go to any live events, that won't surprise you to hear. If you guys don't go to FurCons, it's like traditionally every single night there's at least 3, if not like 5+ hours of DJs going. So like there's no music, but having like live bands coming together has not been as much of a thing. I mean, we had like Sublevel 3 back in the early 2000s, which was like a industrial kind of group. There's a couple of guys. Then we had Matt Ebel was a big deal for a while. I mean, I still hope he kind of is. I like Matt a lot. He's the reason I started doing music. I went to a FurCon and I'm like, hey, how do you do CDs? He said, oh, you just kind of do it. You just record it and then you tell a company to make it for you and it happens. I'm like, oh, great.
I can see you with like a little notepad, waiting for like this really detailed answer, and he's like, you just kind of do it, and you're like, just do it.
Well, the second question was like, how do you get your CD distributed? And they said, oh, you take one, you put it in an envelope, you write an address on it, and you take it to the post office. Like, all right, God. I forgot you can do that. But we're seeing more and more live acts showing up at cons, and that's encouraging.
Yeah, I mean, Effie a couple of years ago had like the rock theme, and I know there's like a lot of local furs here that are into like rock and performing live and stuff.
If you guys like rock music, check out Zephyr with an X. Zephyr, their first out, I think it's like their first like big deal album is coming out soon. They already have a thing. It's a guy named Clumsy who's from he's from Ontario. He's not actually from Toronto, but he's around there.
That's what I was thinking about.
If you guys like a thing, there's probably a furry doing it, which I mean, not to encourage people to consume all of their art directly from the fandom, but hey, if you want a furry rock group, it exists. If you want a furry folk group, it exists. If you want EDM artists, DJs, any kind of visual art, it's around. That's kind of exciting that we have our own little like micro economy going on. I heard someone describe it as a micro economy. Now I keep saying that.
Wow. Now, thank you, because now that's stuck in my head. I'm just going to be seeing economy everywhere I look. I mean, like at cons and on Twitter and Instagram.
We're starting to get clothing brands that are specific just to us and only sell to us, so that's fine.
Yeah, that's wicked. I love that. That's probably one of my favorite things to do at dealers now is just to see like the diversity of clothing that's coming out.
I think I see it almost as a kind of reflexive response to just how concentrated and corporatized everything in regular life is becoming. So like furries are like the opposite, where if it's corporatized, they don't want necessarily anything to do with it. But if you want to get a furry pair of shoes, somebody makes it. And you go to their website and you send the money on PayPal, and then you get a pair of shoes in the mail.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think it's somewhat relaxing to have merch, clothes, or listen to music that are from other furries, because I feel like, I mean, I don't always feel this way, but I know a lot of furries feel like they feel different than a lot of other people, or like they don't fit in with general members of the public. And I think it is a bit relaxing to find like your sources of entertainment from people that understand you, if that makes sense. Like merch, music.
Completely thanks to the internet too.
What'd you say?
So completely thanks to the internet too, because it's so weird to think about the only way you could get art was like hope it's on TV or the theater near our house, because otherwise we'll never hear about it.
Yeah, that's true.
You just go find whatever you want now.
I think that may be why I didn't really find the fandom until I was older, because I really didn't have access to the internet a lot when I was younger, because I grew up in Arkansas down a dirt road. We had like dial-up internet up until like my parents still have dial-up internet, if that tells you anything. So I never had access.
Yeah, I was like 19 when I found not 19, 17 when I found the fandom, but I don't know. I don't want to say that's good, but I feel I was slightly equipped at 17 to deal with this. Whereas if I found it at like 13, I don't know if I would have been able to to handle this. I would have had a lot of regrettable tweets from when I was 14.
Yeah, I can see that. I'd probably be in the same boat.
So you were mentioning that you're slowly starting to see kind of more musicians pop up instead of just mainly furry music being concentrated on DJs. Do you think cons are doing a pretty good job of like showcasing the music talents that we have in the fandom?
Well, this is my one complaint I guess I have with a few cons, but it's not directed at anyone in particular. It's just people in the fandom, especially people who run programming, it seems, I guess either have never been to or that's the only excuse I can think of, just haven't been to a rock concert or really any concert, because every time we get a con together, and I know there's going to be more than one band there, and everyone's kind of going, oh, we need stage time, we have all these setups, teardowns. I'm like, hey guys, if we do like a 3-hour block where you have, let's say, if you have 3 bands, 3 hours, great. You do all that together. You have one setup, one teardown, and then you call it like the music part. They don't set up and tear down the DJs at 5 different slots throughout the day. They're all together in one DJ block. Next, and you do it. Yeah. It seems really hard to get that to happen at cons, because people want to program us now. Because I've been doing this for 5 or 6 years, and for the first 5 or really only the last year has been relatively, I don't know, easy to get booked where we don't have to beg people as much anymore. But when we try to bring in acts that no one knows who is, it sounds more insidious than it is. But you kind of got to trick people into seeing it, because unless you're the kind of person who just wants to go out and see a band you've never heard of, like you guys, do you ever just go out and just see some live music you've never heard of and buy a ticket to a concert you have no idea what it is?
Well, I've never been to a concert, so I'm probably in line with like the con thing where you just don't understand how to put it together or what to do about it.
I'm assuming it's people just lack experience, not that they just can't. Yeah, I try proposing it, and they usually go, "Yeah, it sounds like a pretty cool idea," and then they don't do it. We're trying it for Anthrocon this year. We're going to call it the Anthrocon Music Festival.
Nice.
For stock, you could make your whole theme about it. Wow. And then you take your bands, smush them together, and cut out a whole bunch of teardown times.
Yeah, I would love to see that, honestly. And it's something that's come up recently. I mean, as I think both of you know, I am on executive staff for Furry Fiesta. If you didn't know, you know now. Woo! But
hey, I'll see you in like a week.
Yeah, super soon. But I have seen a lot of feedback from various different people who express, I wouldn't say they complain, I would just say they express a lot of feedback in that we don't have as many music panels or events at conventions. I mainly see the feedback about Fiesta because it's the one that I work for, but I'm sure other cons are the same.
TFF is better than almost all of them too.
Yeah, and I mean, while we've been talking about this, I actually pulled up the schedule and I was just glancing because I got curious about how things were placed at the convention that I work for, mainly because I have to be familiar with this since I control a lot of the social media for the con, so I have to know what's going on in case people ask me. But I was just looking at it. I mean, there's a lot of wonderful music acts. We have
TFF has more live music than pretty much any other con, I think.
Yeah, well, we have this strange group, Fox and Pepper. Never heard of them. And then Alexander James Adams, who's also really amazing. I had a chance to room with them at a con, and that was really nice. But I'm looking at all this, but I think mainly the feedback that I get isn't just about like the music shows, but also like panels, because we have all these art panels and like how to support yourself as a young artist or a budding artist, but we don't have a lot of panels focused on I wouldn't say becoming a musician, because that seems like it's oversimplifying the issue, but like tips and tricks to be a musician, or things like what you were talking about, like becoming a published musician or getting your CDs out there and stuff. I'd love to see, and I don't honestly know if there's any cons that do this, but we have art tracks, we have fursuit tracks, we have writing tracks. Are there any conventions that have music tracks?
I've seen cons like try to go for it, but it ends up, I don't know if we've hit yet the critical mass of, I think we hit on something at First Square just a couple weeks ago where we had just the open jam session that was the panel, because I think a lot of musicians in the fandom don't have groups or necessarily acts that they're ready to put on a stage or like take up an hour of programming with, but they just want to do a song or just play their instrument for a while. And that seemed like a good idea, because we've done a bunch of panels in the past and we've straight up we've done the thing where it's like if you go to university and if within so many minutes no one arrives, we cancel it. We've had that with panels all over the place, and like recently, so I just kind of say like, do you want to do any panels? I just say no. We'll do the shows, that's it. Matt Ebel, who I mentioned earlier, he's a piano rock guy. Please look him up, Matthew Ebel. He has great music, both like fandom related and non-fandom related. He does a panel called Music Business, and I've watched him on Twitter, like cons I'm not at, him on Twitter going, well, here's people here for my thing. Empty room.
Oh no.
Like, I'm not a programming person. I'm getting people into a room is not my greatest talent. If it were, our concerts would be slammed all the time. But I don't know. I'm not sure what to do with it. I don't know if maybe there's just not enough people who want to follow the music track. Maybe it's I don't know. Maybe if you play like organ or something, you can't possibly bring your instrument to the con. So what do you do? Or I'm not sure how to do it.
I feel like it's almost like there is a good population of furries that would like to see it happen, because it seems like everybody I talk to, like my husband, for example, and like a few people in the local community, they all play instruments and they'd like to do something more organized. But it seems like cons aren't good at like programming in general, like in terms of advertising it anyways. Like a lot of the panels that you see get put out there are advertised by the people that run them, but the cons themselves don't tend to typically advertise anything specifically. So it's hard to get it out there in the word of mouth, especially during the con.
That's kind of a constant music issue. Even venues you play at, if you get booked somewhere, they aren't doing advertising for you. So you got to run around and put up signs and talk to everybody, you know?
Well, and that's something that, well, if you guys don't know, what I'm specifically over at Fiesta is PR and marketing, which includes social media. And something that I've tried, even when I helped out with the first year of Denver, was trying to advertise things more than what we normally do, because it not only shows people at the con what's going on, but it also causes a bunch of hype pre-con if you get like a lot of tweets about events out and such. So one thing I try and do for conventions, and I say conventions like I work for several, it's Fiesta, and this is not a marketing ploy to get people to come to Fiesta. That's at the end of this month, March 28th, Dallas. Could be. But one thing I try to do is I work with my social media staffers, and we sit down in the weeks leading up to the convention, and we create a lot of social media content to schedule via TweetDeck and via Facebook's built-in scheduling system. And we have created tweets to go out at predetermined times throughout the convention, and we have focused mainly on like our two biggest areas. So at Fiesta, it's Landmark Stage and Reunion Stage, and we have tweets for every event on both of those stages. Now, it'd be wonderful to get tweets and posts scheduled for every panel, but Fiesta has over 250 events.
It'd be just spam.
Yeah. So we focus at least on the two primary areas, which is Landmark and Reunion. But one thing I try to do leading up to the convention, as soon as the schedule goes out and I know what's going on, I try to reach out to panelists and be like, hey, if you have a flyer or something that you just really want to get the word out there about, let me know. And some people don't bite about it, which is honestly surprising, because I'm basically saying I will advertise for you if you tell me what you want advertised. But I've seen somewhat of a positive response, and I wish I know there's a lot of things that you need to get out as a convention. Registration hours, for example, pre-reg ends today for Fiesta, so I've been really focused on that. Hotel reservations and such. I know you should focus on those because they're the most important, but I would really love to see other conventions start to share all this wonderful programming a bit more instead of just relying on people looking on the schedule, like get the word out there, get people hyped about it.
It's the way that I think about it is it's almost like science conferences that I've seen, like you have the keystone speakers or something. And so for those particular speakers, you have a lot of advertising that you do and you have go on that you want people to get excited about. But then they're also part of a larger section or a larger kind of panel idea that people talk about more, and then they get involved with, and they attend the one keystone talk, but then they attend all the other sessions. So you could have like a live performer like you, Pepper, and then all the other acts afterwards, people will still sit through and watch.
You gotta flip that. You need an opener. You need an opener before us, because it's like I said earlier. It's like you kind of have to trick people into consuming new art that they don't know about.
True.
Because I'm playing to the same people that were going to cons 5-6 years ago when we had shows that would have 5 people in the room, and now we have, you know, in the 30s, 40s, 50s, depending on the con. We always have somebody in the room at least now.
Yeah.
And that's not, and we advertise less and less, and it's not because we've changed what we're doing. It's just people got taken by their friends, or, you know, either forced to see it or socially coerced into seeing it, or they would stick us in front of like the masquerade. They were like, "Oh, go up there, do a song before anything starts." We're like, "Haha, we tricked you into seeing part of our show."
That's great.
Like, I just try to think that everyone thinks at least a little bit like me. People tell me, "Oh, you should listen to this music." I'm like, "Oh, cool, yeah, great." I don't. I'm lazy. I have a very limited amount of time to do anything. When I'm at cons, I want to like hang out at parties mostly, just like socialize and be at things. I'm not following much of a schedule, so I don't expect any other people to be doing that either. But if you stick, First Squared does the keep talking about First Squared. First Squared kind of, they take all their performance-y programming, kind of smush it all together, where they run it in where we got this popular panel, and then in between after that is this person who you've never heard of, but they're good, and then after that is another popular panel. So you kind of trick people into hanging out to see a little bit of the thing.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, I think that's pretty smart.
So essentially, if there's something you want to push, you have to somehow attach it or integrate it into a thing that is already popular. Because people are going to go to the dance comp, they're going to go to the dance, you know, the open dance at the end. They're going to go to opening, they're going to go to maybe fursuit games, you know, the big ones. So you either pack them around that or figure out a way to integrate. And when it comes to information panels, I have no idea how to. I don't know how you do it.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it would just come down to helping make people aware that conventions don't create a lot of the content that is showcased in their programming. Conventions are curators of content. Like, we find people who are interested in hosting these panels, performing these shows, and we smack them together on a schedule and say, "Hey, look what's happening at our convention." There seems to be a lot of, like, not a lot of people are aware that that's how it functions. They think that cons are actually going out and like finding people, or
like a recruitment tool.
Yeah, recruitment or staff. I mean, staff do put on panels. I have several of my own at Fiesta upcoming at the end of the month. And I mean, the same could be said for other staffers at their own conventions. But I think people think that staff either recruit for the shows and panels, or staff put on all the panels and shows. And I think if we made people more aware that, hey, like, you know, your feedback about there needing to be a music track is very valid. The person, for example, that brought this up this past week to me, I was like, hey, like, join staff with us, and if you're really interested in this, you could help with our music track kind of thing. And they're like, oh, heck yeah, like, I'll help with that. And I think we need to be better about communicating that to people and saying, hey, like, if you really want to make the music track happen, or if you want to have more music panels, why not host a panel? And communicating that could maybe help it grow. I don't know if it would solve the empty room scenario, but I think it's a step in the right direction, honestly. Maybe.
What we're saying is, if you're an attendee and only ever want to attend, go to stuff if you want it to exist, because if you don't, they'll stop doing those panels. If you want a certain panel to exist, consider doing it and getting some friends to do it with you. You'd be surprised that usually you'll be able to find help on things.
Yeah, and it's fun.
I love being a part of stuff. I hate organizing it. So if you have it organized and I can just step in and do a thing and be, that was excellent. Like this right now. I'd have to organize this podcast, but I get to be on it. And I'm here to tell you the Buddhist like laziness that I employ in my everyday life.
I'm picturing you in this like Zen pose right now, like you're just like taking it all in, just in full relaxation,
doing as little as possible,
just enjoying it. That's the main thing.
Yeah. So you mentioned earlier, Pepper, you were talking about like audience levels at some of your shows nowadays, and you hinted at, you know, maybe having 3 people in the room. When it varies
wildly.
Yeah. So, I mean, you kind of painted this image for us about when you guys first started and like kind of getting thrown into situations that ended up making people know about you more. How did you get kind of started in the music world, and what was that like?
I was a music student and performing at like bars and stuff since I was 16, just doing cover band gigs. And then I went to get my bachelor's in music education. And while I was there, I spent a whole lot of time doing not opera style singing and not classical trombone, but rather like I messed around with the jazz band, which was fun. Then I feel like, hey, let's form a rock band. Great. I know what this new fandom thing is. Do you think we could play shows at it? So I used to be the guy with the acoustic guitar who just show up and like stand in the lobby and yell songs at people.
Oh no.
That was me. Well, we weren't too overbearing. We'd find a quiet area.
Yeah.
We'd be like, hey, we're doing music. And then after about 4 years, like we'd play in panel rooms. I played a show in a stairwell because they're like, oh, we forgot to put you in the room. So like, that's cool. We'll do it outside the room. And
Oh, wow.
did a show in a lobby once. And, you know, like 2 or 3 people kind of like, oh, yeah, this is all right. And then after 4 or 5 years, I eventually found, I met Foxamore, started playing shows with him, and he already had a bit of an established audience. So that certainly helped. And now, depending on where we are, I think our biggest show ever was around somewhere between 1 and 2,000. It depends on who you're talking to with chair counts. But it was either the After Dark show at MFF last year, which just had like crazy numbers, or the Eurofurence shows we do, which they just fill the room and then say the room is full, no one else can come in.
Wow, that's fantastic. Though.
And they seat about 1,000. And then you go to like smaller cons, like we did Anther Ohio, and we have 20 people, and that's percentage wise, that's really good because there's only a few hundred people there. That's big. I just try to base it off. I find whatever the biggest performing panel is. Like if Uncle Kage has a panel, I'm like, what was his attendance? Because let's compare it to his, because that's a much more accurate barometer than just raw numbers.
Yeah, exactly. Especially when cons vary so much in overall attendance, like you were mentioning.
Yeah, anywhere between 10,000 and 10.
And 10, like you said, I mean, just to reiterate this, 10 could be like really good depending on where you are.
Yeah, if you're at a 100-person con, you have 10% of the con at your.
Wow. Well, that's awesome, and it definitely sounds like music found you before the fandom. You said earlier that you kind of found the fandom at 17 and such, and then
I just played music, and the fandom was the audience that responded. Like they cared and were nice and followed me around, even when not followed me around, listened to my stuff and commented. Before it was really over the quality that deserved any kind of attention.
Mm-hmm.
And it was nice. It was a supportive area. I have such a hard time getting booked at like conventional, like coffee houses or bars, regular places, theaters, which I'd love to play at, but it's just the amount of shenanigans you have to go through is absurd. Meanwhile, Furry is like, yeah, sure, just play it. We can't pay you to play the show, but we'll let you play the show. I'm like, oh, great, that's fine.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the science communication stuff that we do. It's like we found it beforehand, but we like sharing it with the fandom, and there's a positive audience to share it with.
Yeah. Oh, I should mention, if anyone has no idea who I am, my name is Pepper Coyote, and if you look up Pepper Coyote, PEPPERCOYOTE, all one word, just like it sounds like, on like Spotify or any streaming service you use, you'll find me there, and you can listen within seconds, probably on the same app you're hearing this podcast on. Well, depending on your phone.
Yeah, depending on the phone. So I think a lot of people equate music to being like this human created thing, but as most people know, especially like scientists, and especially scientists that are focused on animal related things like me and Nazi, is that music is everywhere. We have bird song. Oddly enough, sometimes it can sound like tigers are singing, or at least to me. To most people, it's probably like, what is this? What do you mean?
It's like wildlife. It's a lullaby.
The evenings in India, listening to the tigers sing through the night.
I'd fall asleep listening to it. And I mean, I often use music to relate to like the state of conservation issues in the world, which may sound silly at first, but there's this saying that, like, when you're talking about species extinctions, and this is really depressing, this is like a content warning for podcast listeners, because sometimes I do make people cry when I talk about conservation issues. I don't try to, but like, I don't know if it's like how passionate I am or what it is, but sometimes people just like get into tears about it, especially when they're my friends and they're drunk and I'm telling them this, and then it's really bad. Shout out to Drop Cheetah, who knows exactly what I'm talking about right now, and I can tell you guys in more detail later. I had him as an emotional wreck at Fiesta last year when I started talking about conservation. I don't know what caused it. Anyway.
Hey, we're an animal loving group.
Exactly. And so when you're talking about like species extinctions and stuff, it's kind of like picturing like this whole symphony of sound, and each species is kind of like a different either note or instrument or some sort of sound in that whole symphony. And as species go extinct, it's like plucking parts of that song out until there's like one left, and then it's gone too. And when I first heard, hear like the size of the background, when I first heard that explanation or like an analogy of species extinction, I was like, oh man, it's exactly like that, because all these species play such an important part in our world, whether we see it or not. And plucking them out, it's like plucking those important instruments out until like nothing makes sense anymore, and then it doesn't make anything at all. Of course, my southern accent just came out really strongly there. But not only can you use that as an analogy, but each of these species plays a really important role in like sound-based ecosystem, or soundscapes, as people say. I mean, Nazi, you hear quite a bit of strange insect sounds, I'm sure, in your world.
Yes. All the time.
Yeah, and I mean, we typically think of animal music or animal vocalizations as something that is verbal, but a lot of the things that you study is nonverbal communication.
Yeah. So a lot of the insects, they have really unique kind of instruments on their bodies. Like if you look at grasshoppers, they have their wings where it's a comb and comb mechanism. They rub them together and it makes that sound. Same with crickets. And then there are some that have them on their legs, like katydids. And then there's even some like cicadas that have them built into their bodies themselves. One of the really cool facts about cicadas that I love to share is that they have something called a tympanum inside their abdomen, which is this hollow chamber with something of a like metallic substance in the middle. And then they have 4 muscles on either side that are connected to the corners. And then when they twist the metal thing inside of that little chamber, it creates a giant echo that buzzes. And some cicadas can be heard from up to 2 kilometers away, which is kind of nuts.
Awesome. Pepper,
Yeah, we got them here in Arizona.
could you imagine having an instrument built inside of your body?
I don't have to imagine.
Oh,
Oh, it's true. Gotcha.
Is this a gotcha podcast?
That was the gotcha question my first day in music history. They're like, what is the oldest instrument? And we're all like, oh, the lute. They're like, it's the voice, you nerds. And we're like, oh.
Oh my gosh, you got me on that one. This is a gotcha podcast now. I was picturing like a guitar that's like built inside of you. Like I was just being really weird with that question, and then you like said something legit. You know,
Well,
you
look,
got
I could eat a tiny violin.
You could. I
And
don't
then there
know.
will
I
be-
mean, I'm not a human doctor. I do have doctor in my name, but I will say I don't think that's something they would recommend doing.
Oh, you just gotta file down the tuning pegs. You know,
Oh, okay.
rip it. Oh boy,
It's like sword
it's getting
eating.
too real.
Oh no, it's, I mean, real talk, and I'm going to put a disclaimer. Please, no one do this just
Don't
to get
eat a
my
violin.
attention. But it would be kind of amusing to see someone do like the sword eating performance, but it is a tiny violin.
You can do the violin bow. I mean,
I would
that's true.
just be clapping. I'd be standing up in the audience in the very back of the room, just clapping as loudly and big as I could, because it would
I
just be
think
entertaining.
if you can get a sword, if you can do like sword swallowing, you could definitely do a violin bow. That seems like it'd be easier actually. It's
There's
like
probably
smaller.
someone on YouTube that's already done it.
Oh yeah.
I'm gonna spend my night looking that up now.
The worst ever. Did you guys ever do a thing when you were younger and bored? I was like eating spaghetti, which I did not do. I don't like spaghetti anymore. Maybe this is why. But I would eat spaghetti and I would like try to I'd swallow the noodle, but I'd like hold on to the other end of the noodle and be like, and then pull it back out like of my.
Oh no, Pepper,
It'll
no.
straighten out down your esophagus, and then you can pull the spaghetti, and it feels real weird.
All right,
Yeah, so I'm gonna have to like change the subject now. We're gonna have to move.
Do that. It won't hurt you. It's just weird.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about that. I have a lot of mixed emotions right now.
Oh, well, I mean, it is. Well, if we're going back to the science side of things, it's Pepper trying to learn trophallaxis for becoming a bird.
Yay. I can only do spaghetti.
Yeah.
And before we start quizzing you on bird facts, including that fancy word that was just said, actually, I don't think we have a question based on that, but still, you were talking about how voice, using your voice is like the oldest instrument out there. One thing that I like to point out about like animals and their voices is that some species have such unique vocal cords that they can actually sound completely unique as individuals. We like to think of animals as being like part of the herd kind of thing, and like everything's all these duplicates. But a lot of species, if you actually look at the sound waves of their voices, actually get into the nitty gritty of it, they sound as unique as all three of us do. If I were to get anybody else into this, we would all sound different. Even if we couldn't see each other, didn't know each other before, we would all have our unique voices. And there's a lot of species, tigers, for example, that you can tell them apart on their voice alone, kind of like a vocal fingerprint.
But Nazi's a different species. He's Canadian.
Canadian. It's really funny you mentioned that, because now this is going to turn into Tiger Hour. Hopefully not an hour of me ranting about this, but
I always want to hear about tigers.
Research, we started out by looking at individual voices. So how unique is Tiger 1 from Tiger 2? Can you tell them apart? So we started looking at individuals. We started looking at male and female differences. And then we progressed to looking at all the different subspecies of tigers. And put simply, if you guys don't know this, tiger subspecies are very geographically distinct. So Bengals are only found in like the Indian region of Asia. And then you have Sumatran tigers, which it's in their name. They're in Sumatra. The Malayan tigers. And of course, the big daddy tigers of Russia, the Amur tigers, or Siberian, if you want to call them that. And so all of them have these like distinct geographical areas with like minimal to no overlap now. So we've been jokingly saying when we've been studying it that we're looking at tiger accents. So
yeah, they're like evolving totally separately.
Yeah. So it's funny that you mentioned the whole Canadian thing. It's like that's actually part of our research.
We can go to the Toronto Zoo and to see if the tigers, when they call out, they don't just cry, they just go, hey.
Oh no.
This is another weird aside, but you guys remember that movie that Seth Rogen was in that like North Korea may or not have like hacked the there was a movie about North Korea and they got mad and someone like hacked Sony, so they pulled it out of theaters and stuff.
Oh, the interview.
Yeah, that's the one. The interview. So this is not really a spoiler, but at one point in that movie, they're like trying to like run away and they're in the snow. First of all, I'm like, North Korea, snow? Because I'm an idiot and I don't really know geography that well. And then they get attacked by a tiger and I'm like, there's no wait a second. I looked up. Yep. If you go north enough, you can run into the Siberian tigers. Yeah.
So there is, and it's funny you bring that up because no one except certain Russian scientists have been able to go there and study those tigers. So it's kind of weird, but like North Korea is this weird refuge for the Siberian tigers because
no one can mess with them.
No one can mess with them. And I actually brought this up to somebody at a fur meet like a few weeks ago. And they're like, well, how do they know there's tigers in North Korea? And I was like, well, I really don't know how they found that out, but there are, and they've let some Russian scientists work with them. Yeah, I mean, I'd love to record some North Korean tigers, but I don't know. I don't want to go over there.
You might be able to see a tiger from like a satellite image or like a spy plane or something. Maybe
with the microphones on it.
Yeah.
So that's your next funding source, is just to get the U.S. government to like fund your drone expedition to North Korea to try and find tigers.
I'm gonna write that down right now. I should message the rest of my research team. Be like, new plan, drop everything. This is what we're doing now.
There is so much drone footage of tigers like chasing drones, basically. Like, well, everything. I think I saw one with cheetahs. They're like, they're gonna teach the cheetahs how to hunt by flying around drones, and they're gonna catch them.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, that would work. That would work pretty well. Well, until the drone gets like destroyed.
Oh yeah, it's like one-time use. They bring the cheapest drones. They tie a chicken leg to it and go for it, man.
And on the drone topic, people are starting to use those quite a bit more in the field of conservation. I mean, I haven't used them with my tiger research, but and I know some people that study dolphins, and they use drones to like send out over the ocean to like find the pods and such to make it easier on them, and collect video from overhead instead of just from the side of a boat. And they get a lot of really useful data from those things.
Yeah,
all jokes aside.
I assume it's like less intrusive than if you have a boat or a freaking helicopter. You can almost kind of sneak in there.
Exactly. And some of the drones, I mean, you could strap a microphone on those to do bioacoustics recording, but the drones themselves are kind of loud. But what I have seen them do is they can use drones to like place other recording equipment. And oddly enough, the same company that makes the recorders for my tiger research, they also make marine recorders that you can actually put in the water, and they will record underwater sounds such as like dolphin vocalizations and, oddly enough, dolphin song. I mean, I was joking about tiger songs earlier, but dolphins do have somewhat of a song-like vocalization to them. Not on the level of birds or like humans singing, of course, but it can kind of sound like that. I mean, it's not very far off from like whale song that became so popular in the 80s from like whale song CDs and like tranquility music.
You'd find that rack in the one weird aisle.
No. It's
whale
like
CDs.
The dolphin band. Like dolphin rock music.
Are dolphins smart enough to like create music for its own sake that doesn't mean anything? To just kind of like sing that doesn't do anything?
That's a very good question. I would feel like they would be intelligent enough to find ways to entertain themselves like that, but I don't know if anybody's ever like looked into it.
Like you can teach some primates rhythms, and that's neat. Like they don't get melody or harmony structures or anything, but you can get them to like beat stuff back at you the same way you beat it at them.
Exactly.
Yeah, kind of like birds.
Mm-hmm.
Like get them to learn a song and then they just won't stop.
Yeah. I was trying to freaking make fun of my one bird friend going like, you don't have lips, you can't smile. And he's like, and I'm like, you don't have lips, you can't talk. And I'm like, wait, birds are like the only other animal that like completely can talk sometimes. Or at the very least mimic so you can understand what they're saying.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, one of the best examples of that was Alex, the African gray. I think he was an African gray. And they kind of taught him different textures and colors and like different phrases and such. And I mean, some of it is mimicking, obviously, but Alex had like this incredible vocabulary. I mean, he would ask for water, which is kind of interesting. Mm-hmm. Like during the research
like associating
sessions,
me, that's cool.
If he got thirsty, he would ask for water, and there'd be situations where like they would present him with like a piece of cloth and it's yellow, and they would ask him what texture, and he would say, like, he would touch it with his beak, kind of feel it around a little bit, and then he would say wool, and then they would ask what color, and he'd say yellow.
Wow.
Yeah, there's a documentary on YouTube you can watch about it, actually. It's really cool.
Yeah, poor Alex. I think, I mean, he passed away, I feel like not too long ago, but maybe...
No, I don't think it was. I think it was like 2 or 3 years ago, maybe now.
Yeah. So
I mean, it had like the most interesting bird life possible.
Right? Yeah.
They taught it English.
And
what's my purpose? To learn English.
To learn English, to learn texture and colors.
Yeah, like learn about 400 words and we'll be really impressed.
Yeah, and I don't know. Now I'm going to have to Google it because I can do this really quick. How Alex, the African gray vocabulary, because now you got me curious how many exact words. Oh, not close to 400. Alex had a vocabulary of over 100 words.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, and I mean, he could understand it too. It wasn't just mimicking. Like he could, they could present situations that weren't necessarily trained in, and he could like adapt to it. So that was pretty cool.
That's pretty great.
Numbers too.
Yeah.
It's crazy that we're learning so much about like animals and just how much they can learn and associate from other animals like us.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, how much do we actually know about how intelligent something is? Like our dolphin example before, like whether they can actually talk and communicate specific things, or in their own kind of aquatic way of talking, how they can communicate that this is a sharp object or this is a whale that we should kind of hitch a ride with or something.
Mm-hmm.
Like whether that's true or not.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because I know a little bit about dolphin communication. Obviously, it's not my expertise because I focus so much on big cats, but dolphins are in a whole different like ball game kind of thing when it comes to intelligence and ways of communicating. I mean, tigers, don't get me wrong, they're incredibly intelligent, but tigers are built to be predators, so their intelligence is based on, I wouldn't say it's based just on the hunt, but they have a whole different way of life than what dolphins do. So I think when we talk about intelligence, we need to think about where the animal fits in the grand scheme of things, because intelligence means different things based on what species we're talking about. With dolphins, they have this really complex like social behavior and social system. So it's really important for them to be able to communicate with each other, like not only in hierarchy, but to find individuals. And something that I found really interesting that I discovered when I started the tiger work was that dolphins have something known as signature whistles. And what they saw was that these signature whistles are basically like names. So they actually give names to their calves, or these signature whistles, and they use that to call to their calves to like come back to them. And they only do that signature whistle when around those individuals. Like they
do those
don't.
babies also do that same whistle, like as a response, or
They do. Like they have like a sound for their mom.
Cool.
Yeah, like the mom has, like, there's a signature whistle in that social system that represents that particular mom and that particular baby. It's like having a name.
That kind of makes me think, and I don't know anything about this specifically, but is that why when trainers at like aquariums are trying to train dolphins and orcas and stuff, they use the whistle? And is that like associating a certain thing, like a name, to a certain dance or something for the animal to do? Is that why they use the whistle?
So the whistle is a bit different when it comes to like training situations such as that, because that's a part of establishing like positive reinforcement in training scenarios. So those training whistles, people use them not only with dolphins, but they'll use them with tigers or gorillas or anything like that. And basically when an animal does something that you have like asked it to do, like say, I just use gorillas as an example, but when you're working with gorillas, you obviously you can't go in with them. So you have to find ways of training them to present certain parts of themselves so you can like do vet exams and such. And one thing that's really important with gorillas, especially females, is being able to do ultrasounds on them. So if you're trying to establish if they're pregnant or not, and you can train them to present like their belly closer to the edge of like the fencing, so you can get the ultrasound probe close enough to actually do like the scan and such. And so say that you've been training this gorilla to present its belly to you. When they present the belly, you blow the whistle, and that's basically giving them an audible connection saying you did it correctly. And then you reward them with something else, whether it's a treat or like, some animals that are safe, you can reward them with like tactile reinforcement, like give them a scritch or something, like a dog, like it's a little scritch if they do it right. So the whistle is just like a lead in to getting the reward. It's like the audible reinforcement of it.
So you're talking conditioning versus like society.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder if you could like kind of discern or separate actually learning a language versus just like the reinforcement of the whistle. Like if you could kind of learn how the dolphins were speaking or the patterns they were using, and then use that pattern to make associations with objects, and then that's teaching them your language, and you can kind of start to translate to see if they actually can learn an entire language, where a bird only learned like 100 words in its lifetime. Maybe something on the level of a dolphin could learn a language, and then you could start communicating.
Yeah, and that would be really awesome. I don't know if anybody's done that specifically with dolphins, like directly into their like language system, which some scientists are probably going to be listening to this and be like, only humans have language, but everything has language to a certain extent. It's just, it may not be exactly like ours, but I would like to say that dolphins do have a language. They have those signature whistles, and that's a pretty good foundation of it. But one way that scientists do try and understand like animal vocalizations and to see what sounds are associated with what things is they do playback studies. So they'll basically record certain vocalizations and then play it back to those animals with a human present, or just playing it back randomly in a forest and seeing what kind of behavior is elicited from that. We do it with tigers, not specifically my study, but people will do it with tigers, and other big cats where they will play back vocalizations to see if like certain sounds are like mating calls or not, and seeing if that will like bring a female out or bring a male out or things like that. So it's possible to do that. Would it be possible to kind of decipher dolphin language in particular? Maybe. I think it'd be incredibly complex, but I don't think it would be impossible to understand it better via playback.
And even then, you might only learn like that one club of dolphins language. It might not be transferable to other dolphins. Oh no.
Oh, and it's funny you say that, because the rabbit hole just goes farther, because like I was joking about tiger accents earlier. Well, I wasn't really joking, but I brought it up. They have found that, I think it was humpback whales, but I'd have to look it up again. But there was one species of whale that basically had this huge range all around the world, and certain populations had different accents and different song systems than those found elsewhere in the world. So it is a thing. Different languages with the same species, not only with humans, but with whales and other things too.
Wow.
How does it work out if you take like a Sumatran tiger and like a golden tiger and they're hanging out? Can they still communicate, or are they just like, who is this?
Most places do try to avoid like mixing of those. Like a lot of the accredited places, so the Association of Zoos and Aquariums, they don't intermingle the subspecies like that, just because they're trying to make sure genetics stay good for eventual release back into the wild, or like species survival. But I mean, non-accredited places, for worse or for better, they do often mix subspecies. And it works out well. I mean, I'm sure they understand basic things about each other, because it's just kind of like they're just a big cat. I mean, like it or not, it's like Mr. Fluffy at home gained 300 pounds. That's what a tiger is. Like everything about them behavior-wise is just the same as your house cat at home. It just has deadly fangs and hundreds of pounds attached to it now.
Yeah.
So they learn. They definitely do.
Well, now somebody has a project. They can make a dolphin Rosetta Stone or something.
Somebody's going to quote me on that now. And be like, Dr. Wildlife said it was possible, and it's going to be. Everything she says is fact.
But along the lines of understanding our species, we have a section, or a little section here on our podcast, Pepper, where we like to test our guests' ability to understand their persona.
Oh no.
So
I am so good at coyote trivia. I'm not good at bird trivia.
Well, guess what?
Yeah.
Oh,
guess
boy.
what we did? In order to like initiate you into the bird kingdom, we have to make sure you understand us.
All right.
We take your character away if you fail. That's what happens.
Oh no.
I'm kidding.
I've only had this bird for like a month.
So we have 5 questions here. They're going to start off a little bit easier, but I got a little bit nasty with some of them. They might be a little bit harder as they go on. We'll see.
I'm sitting in front of a computer, but I will not cheat.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
All right. So for question 1, birds are very light, so they can fly easier. What adaptation do birds have compared to other vertebrate animals that allows them to achieve this light weight?
Oh, I mean, like hollow bones is a big one.
Ding, ding. That's the one. I told you it was going to start off easy.
Look how on point we were. We didn't even plan that ding ding. We did it at the same time.
Pro podcasters. That's what we are. Yeah.
Doing it right.
All right. Question 2. Are birds colorblind like many animals?
Oh, you guys kind of gave this one away with earlier. I mean, if a bird can identify yellow, then it must be no.
Yeah, that's correct. Ding ding.
Yay.
But not only are they not colorblind, but they can actually see a wider spectrum.
They have more cones. They have 4 cones.
Yeah, so they can see into the ultraviolet.
They can see into other dimensions.
So that'd be cool.
One of the reasons for it actually is because a lot of insects, they fluoresce different when they're on flowers and that kind of thing. And so it's like a competitive battle between like flowers and insects and birds. Pretty cool.
Yeah. So they just get like highlighted by the not ultrasonic, what the heck is wrong with me? with their extra yellow cone, they can see the ultraviolets.
Yeah.
I screwed you up because I said they could see into other dimensions.
Like ultrasonic.
They can see sound.
Oh, wow.
They can see emotion.
Oh, no.
So, question 4. Birds don't have what humans would call a nose. Instead, they have openings to the nasal cavities called blank.
Oh, come on. I don't know. I can't do short answer. I need multiple choice. I have no idea. It's going to be a scientific name.
The next one will be multiple choice.
I do not know at all.
All right. It's called nares.
Oh.
Yeah,
that's easy.
It's like the hard beak outside shell there. Cool.
Oh, I would hate not being able to frickin' like blow my nose properly.
Yeah, close your nose and everything. It's my problem when I wear Nasty. I just can't stop sniffing.
Oh my gosh. That's a quote. I told you I was going to make a quote book for these podcast episodes and just going in it.
It's all those dang musky huskies. I
just can't stop sniffing.
Sniffing.
Oh my God.
That's like a t-shirt. Can't stop sniffing.
Oh my God. People would buy it. That goes back to our microeconomy earlier. I mean, just as a quick little segue back to earlier, it's like the microeconomy. People will buy it.
There we go. Some nasty merch. Next con coming to a con near you.
Oh my God. Okay. Anyway, last question.
Question 5. In the popular 90s children book series Animorphs, who is the character most well known for their red tail hawk morph? A. Jake, B. Tobias, C. Cassie, D. Marco.
Frickin' he was important because he stayed a hawk so long he wouldn't transform back because he was like, whatever, I just want to be a hawk forever. Like,
yeah, exactly.
So I should know this. Like, I know who we're talking about. I'm just so bad at names. Is it you said Tobias. Isn't it Tobias? I don't know. How do you say it?
No, maybe I'm pronouncing it wrong, but it's Tobias. You're correct. Ding, ding.
Hey, that's like, remember you'd play old video games and before there was voice acting, it was actually kind of up for debate how you pronounced anything. And you'd be like, I've been playing Deus Ex. And this one would be like, I've been playing Deuce X.
Oh my God.
Who's correct? Who's wrong? Who knows? There's no internet.
But you did really well. You got 4 out of the 5.
That's right. I read the
I guess you can stay a bird.
Yep, you can stay a bird. You own the rights to Pepperhawk now. P-Hawk.
I clearly remember in Animorphs, the last one I read, I think, the freaking 2 people turned into flies for some reason, and they were trying to describe like how they were seeing, and it was just like, wow. Were those books considered really good? Because I cannot imagine someone more effectively making me feel like I'm a fly than the way they just like. That was a good chapter.
I don't know. I enjoyed them when I was growing up.
Aren't there like hundreds of those books though, or did I just imagine there were?
No, I'm pretty sure there's quite a few. I don't know if it's hundreds, but it's probably like dozens.
That person's still doing books, and they're still like super furry.
Yeah.
Still, like,
they
like
contributed to this generation of furries.
Oh yeah.
I think they're making like an Animorphs Netflix series too, or there was some proposal to do it. I don't know.
Well, I know what I'm going to be watching.
Yeah.
I hope they don't use, if they use too much CG, I hope it's good. Because I'm totally fine with like the camera pans away, it pans back, and there's a bear standing there. Like, that's it. That's the transformation sequence. Just don't do it. That's fine. make some gross sounds off camera. I have an imagination.
Oh my god.
But if it looks like the goofy fronts of the books where they just slowly crossfade a picture of an animal and a picture of a person until they...
What if they just make it like really dark and demented like the new Hellboy trailer did with the Jaguar guy whose character...
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, everyone was taking that few seconds of that and tweeting that around when it came out.
Yeah, I was part of that, but not on Twitter. I keep those interests to Telegram. I just spam Telegram chats with that kind of interest. Yeah, I was one of those people. Because that was, here goes the transformation talk, which could probably have a podcast episode all of its own. But
transformation talk. There you go.
Yeah, transformation talk. Yeah, so if they do something like in the new Hellboy, maybe a little less gruesome. I mean, it wasn't too gory, but, you know, a little, and then... That'd be good. But yeah, if it's like slow transformation, then I don't know. I won't get through one transformation before turning off the show, probably.
Sure.
I mean, I don't need to see like bones cracking and...
Yeah.
Come on.
Just pan away and show me a bear when you go back. That's all I need.
This is magic. I feel it can be... You can make whatever rules you want.
Well, you did.
The Harry Potter one was great. It was like McGonagall stand there and just like whoop, cat jump, boom, cat, instant. You're like, yeah,
it was like a shadow or something, right? Like
I think you watched The Shadow at least once. I think it got better as the movies went, and they could do a like fancier.
Exactly.
Because over the course of 10 years or whatever that series took up, you get better computers.
Exactly. Technology improved slowly over time, but it did.
And you did so well on those questions, Pepper, that we're going to move into our last segment for the podcast, and it's called Guess Who, and who as in H-O-O. You've unlocked it. There you go.
I'm imagining, like, if I didn't get those right, it's like, well, we have to end the podcast early. Sorry, everybody. See you.
But this segment is to test our listeners' knowledge on animals' vocalizations. So... we like to play a little clip, and then we'll see how well you know the animal that's making that noise. And for the guests that are listening, you can send your answers or guesses into Phyla and Fandom at gmail.com, or use hashtag Guess Who, again, who with an H-O-O, on any of our social media. Here is the clip.
That's so weird.
I don't even know if that's a mammal or not. Like, it's like a chinchilla, or is it like a bird?
Well, you'll have to tune into next week until figure it out. So you can send your guesses into phylandfandom at gmail.com or on any of our social media, hashtag Guess Who, and that's who with an H-O-O.
Sorry, I'm still laughing over Pepper's guess. Not a chinchilla.
I'm like small mammal. What can I think of? That's the one. Chinchilla. So common. You see them every day. Just tripping over chinchillas trying to get to my car in the morning.
Oh my god.
Oh god. All right. So last week's clip was this. For those who didn't guess, because this is our third episode and we'll release them all at the same time, but for those who guessed while they were listening to the second episode, it is a deer. So that's what I am. Yay.
I'll do an impression.
You know what? We should just clip that and then edit it into a podcast. Like,
what's this animal?
I'm gonna leave that in this episode, but then I'm gonna wait a year from now. I'm gonna mark it on my calendar. A year from now, I'm gonna edit that in.
Sounds good.
We would deer hunt back in Pennsylvania, and the deer call is like two pieces of wood you would scrape together, like a bad hinge.
That's pretty close, actually. I mean, that was actually pretty close to our audio file.
Very breathy. It sounds like an emergency. It sounds like they're screaming a fire is happening.
Yes.
Help! Help! Help!
And that's exactly what I sound like.
Oh. See, I became a bird and you became not a bird, or you've been not a bird a lot longer than I have been a bird.
It's true.
Yeah.
You found out I was coming and jumped ship.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of like me with the protogen that I've had for a while, and then now I'm starting to get a tiger. I think it's just natural for people in the fandom to be like, I suddenly want another character. Like even for those diehard people who are like, I'm one character forever. You'll never see me as anything else. It's probably like a 90% chance they have a secret character that they just don't.
They have a folder full of art in there.
I just want to get Pepper drawn as other various animals. I don't even consider them new characters. It's just a new shape of the same guy.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I feel too.
Well,
All right.
Well, Pepper, it has been a lot of fun having you on here. I think I've met you a handful of times at cons, but it's been room parties and such, and who knows if we've remembered the encounters of seeing each other briefly and saying,
yeah, let's actually make it a thing at TFF. I know you're going to be working, but if you ever have a minute, we can properly meet, become acquainted in real life.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, what's wonderful about my social media team, as I mentioned earlier in the podcast, we do a lot of our work before con. Like we do a lot of scheduling of things on Facebook and Twitter and Telegram ahead of time.
That's pretty smart.
It frees up our time basically at the con and allows us not only to be able to enjoy it ourselves, but also to be able to focus on immediate things like attendee questions and such. So I will definitely have time to say hello to you and spend some time chatting outside of Discord.
Yeah, and I'll see Nassie in like 5 days.
Yeah, I'll be at FE this weekend and I'll see you there.
Awesome. Well,
I leave Thursday at 11:50 p.m. So
you sound ready.
Hey, Air Canada will hopefully treat me nicely.
We shall see. If not, I'm sure they'll say sorry for it. Says the two Americans laughing, and Nazi remains silent.
Sorry for no.
So obviously, Pepper, you've done a great job supporting this podcast by being a guest. But for those of you that have not had a chance to be a guest yet and are listening to this and wondering how you can support our podcast, it's very simple. You can support us on our Patreon, which you can find by looking up Phyla and Fandom. You can also follow us on Twitter under the same name. Be sure to also follow our network, which is Nerd Sloth, on Twitter as well, because they're very graciously hosting us on their site and helping us provide that network connection that this podcast so needs. You can also find me, Dr. Wildlife, on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram under, believe it or not, Dr. Wildlife. I am really easy to find on there, too.
You can find me on social media at Entobird. That's Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook.
And Pepper, you said this earlier, but just to repeat, could you let us know how we can find you on social media, too?
Oh, if you look up Pepper Coyote, one word spelled just how it sounds, on pretty much anything, I am there. I'm on Patreon. Twitter is my biggest social media. YouTube, I'm putting out stuff. Any streaming service, you can listen to my music or the music of me and Foxamore, which is called Foxes and Peppers. That's our combo group. And hey, hopefully I'll see anybody listening at a con soon, because we go to like all of them.
Awesome. And the same applies to both of us podcast hosts. We'll be at a lot of upcoming cons this upcoming year, and we hope to see you all there. Otherwise, thanks for tuning in to Phyla and Fandom, and we look forward to seeing you all next week.
See ya.
Bye-bye.